You've got $100,000 for a trawler, and at that price, the boats couldn't be more different. One's a 44-foot classic dripping with teak. The next, a tidy 35-footer, half its age, same money. Pick wrong, and you'll spend years fixing a boat instead of cruising it. So here's what $100,000 really buys in the 2026 market. The real numbers, the real running costs, and which one's the smart buy. Because it's usually not the one you'd expect. Let's get into it. You'd think $100,000 puts you in the heart of the trawler market. It doesn't. In 2026, there are more than 1,500 used trawlers listed on Yacht World alone, and over 1,700 on boats.com, with an average asking price of almost $260,000, and prices that run from around $22,000 to past $8 million. $100,000 puts you in the older, value-driven bottom third. That's not a problem, as long as you shop differently. Down here, you're not buying a brand or length, you're buying condition. Which brings us to the choice every $100,000 buyer has to make. Door number 1, maximum length and classic trawler soul. That's the world of 1970s and 80s CHBs, marine traders, and the iconic Grand Banks. Big interiors, traditional lines, teak everywhere, and older systems hiding underneath. Door number 2, lower maintenance, a better helm, a more modern interior, and a boat you can use this weekend. That's late 1990s Mainships, the occasional Rossboro 35, and smaller tug-style boats. For $100,000, you can't have both, and one of those doors is the smart money. We start at the bottom of the market, because that's where the most dangerous temptation lives. The real floor of this market isn't $100,000. It's a $35,000 to $80,000 band. Wall-to-wall older hulls with roomy interiors and tired diesels. This is where the small, older boats live. CHB 34s and double cabins, Marine Trader 36s and 40s, Albin 36s, Monk 36s. Most of them sit somewhere from the high 20s to the mid-60s. And here's the one that stops people cold. Even a Grand Banks 36 Classic, that legendary name, can dip into the high 50s at the bottom of its range. This is the band where length is cheap and time is expensive. Push towards your full budget and you'll find what looks like the deal of the video. A Marine Trader 44 dipping under $100,000. Flush deck, semi-displacement, twin Ford Lehman 120 diesels, 500 gallons of fuel, an 8-knot cruise, a queen berth aft, a V berth forward, 2 heads with separate showers, dual helms, and a huge flybridge. 44 feet of genuine trawler real estate for under 6 figures. Same story with a CHB 42 in the high 70s. Twin Perkins diesels, over 6 feet of cabin headroom, a semi-displacement hull, and serious tankage. It looks unbeatable. More boats for less money. But here's what you're not seeing in the photos. A surveyor's breakdown of the Grand Banks 36 points straight at the usual suspects for hulls this age. Worn teak decking, varnish and timber cooked by years of UV. An engine history only as good as its paperwork. And add-on systems, generators, air conditioning, water makers that got bolted on later and can quit the moment the boat's been sitting. Here's the good news, and the trap. These boats are cheap to run. A twin Lehman Grand Banks 36 cruises around 8 knots on roughly 4 gallons an hour. Nothing for a 40-footer. So the danger was never fuel. The danger is that down here, a livable cruiser and a bottomless project look identical in the listings. What tells them apart is the stack of invoices the last owner can hand you. No invoices, no deal. So if the biggest, cheapest classic is a coin flip, where does your money work best? Right here, roughly $90,000 to $150,000. And one boat owns this zone. The Mainship 350. The 350 sits right on your number, and it was built for someone who wants to cruise, not restore a boat. It's an economical, low-maintenance coastal cruiser. Classic trawler looks, wrap-around salon windows, a side door at the lower helm, and 2 staterooms. And these boats are everywhere for a reason. Mainship built 501 hulls across the 350 and 390 run, the most successful trawler line they ever made. For you, that means parts, knowledge, and choice. The hull is happy at 7 to 8 knots, returns about 2 to 3 nautical miles per gallon, and a single-engine boat will still hit around 14 knots when you need it. And the prices back it up. Clean late 1990s 350s trade right around $100,000. Spend a little more, up toward $150,000, and you'll find the well-sorted ones. A single Caterpillar diesel, a 14-foot two-beam, 300 gallons of fuel, 2 staterooms, an enclosed flybridge, sometimes a bow thruster, 15 feet of bridge clearance with the mast down. These are boats set up for single-handing and the Great Loop. This isn't a nostalgia project. It's a boat you step onto and use. Then there's the wild card, the Rossboro 35, a rarer boat that can land right under $100,000, and the good ones punch above their size. A single Cummins diesel, often with low hours, bow and stern thrusters, a generator, a full-beam master cabin aft, and a guest cabin forward, with the range to run the Great Loop. Against those 44-foot classics, that's the whole less boat, more readiness argument in one hull. But I know what a lot of you are really here for: the badge. So how far does $100,000 stretch toward an iconic Grand Banks 42? Further than you'd think. Clean 1980s 42s turn up in the $80,000 to $100,000 range. And don't assume they're all tired hulks. At this money, you can find ones with refurbished tanks, a newer generator, solar, even Starlink and stabilizers. Sounds like the win of the decade. A loaded 42-foot Grand Banks for $100,000. Here's the catch. You're still buying an older boat, and it has to earn your money line by line, never on the name on the hull. What if you can stretch another $20,000, maybe $30,000 on top? Most people assume that extra money buys more boat. It doesn't. It buys the boat you actually wanted in the first place. Take the step up from the 350 into the Mainship 390, and you're starting around $110,000, climbing into the mid-130s for the best of them. For that, you get a just under 40-foot boat with the same 14-foot two-beam, 300 gallons of fuel, a cruise just shy of 9 knots, and a 14-knot top end from a single 330-horsepower Cummins, sipping around 3 gallons an hour. The layout opens up too: a Queen Island berth forward, a convertible guest queen, and a side deck helm door. The extra money buys the version of the Mainship most couples actually want. The other stretch lane teaches the same lesson: the Nordic Tug 32, which generally sits in the low 130s. These cruise at 7 to 8 knots on about a gallon an hour, and they hold their resale value like almost nothing else in this class. Your $100,000 can touch a smaller Nordic Tug 26, but the 32 everyone pictures takes another $25,000 to $35,000. It's the same with the classics. A Grand Banks 36 spans from the high 50s at the bottom to well past $120,000 for a strong one. And a really clean Monk 36 can push toward $140,000. So in this stretch tier, you're rarely buying more boat, you're buying the same boat in far better order. Now the part that decides whether this is a smart buy or an expensive mistake. The part no listing photo shows you. A $100,000 boat is not a $100,000 boat. It starts before you even own it, the survey. On an older trawler, you do not skip it. 2026 guidance puts a pre-purchase survey at roughly $20 to $40 a foot. Most buyers spend between $500 and $2,000 once you add haul out and travel. On a 40-footer, the survey alone is around $800 to $1,600. Then you lift it out of the water to inspect the bottom. About $15 to $17 a foot to haul, wash, and launch. Call it $620 to $820 on a 40-footer. Then the bottom paint. A straightforward recoat runs $40 to $44 a foot, roughly $1,600 to $1,760 on a 40-footer. But if it needs a first-time strip-it-to-the gel coat job, that jumps to $124 to $129 a foot. Then the bills that never stop. Insurance runs about 1.5% of hull value a year. Call it $1,500 on a $100,000 trawler. Dockage is the quiet killer. A 40-foot slip at $16 to $18 per foot per month adds up to roughly $7,700 to nearly $9,000 a year before electricity or any premium marina. Add up just the conservative version, survey, haul, a basic bottom job, insurance, 1 year of slip fees, and you're already at roughly $12,000 to $14,500 in year one. And that's before engine service, batteries, canvas, refrigeration, electronics, upholstery, a tender, or any upgrade you want. So that $100,000 boat is really a $120,000 to $130,000 boat in year one. The guidance is blunt. Budget 10 to 20% of the boat's value every year just to keep it running. And then there's the one number that can blow the whole plan apart: a repower. If those diesels are tired, you're not in for pocket change. A professional repower on a 30 to 45 foot boat commonly lands between $40,000 and $80,000. And the engine itself is often only 40 to 60% of that bill. The rest is labor and yard time. Even a basic marine diesel replacement starts around $10,000 and climbs well past $30,000. So, if a survey turns up serious engine trouble, your budget is blown, which is exactly why the survey is non-negotiable. It's the cheapest insurance you'll ever buy on this boat. So, what does $100,000 get you in a trawler in 2026? For most buyers, the smartest boat on the market right now is a clean, late 1990s Mainship 350. There's real choice out there. You get a true two-stateroom cruising layout on a 14-foot two-beam, far less bright work to baby than the teak-heavy classics, an efficient 7 to 8 knot cruise, and resale that holds. Stretch a little, and the early Mainship 390 is the upgrade that finally hands you the boat you pictured. But if you want the boldest boat for the money, the one that stops the scroll, it's the under $100,000 Grand Banks 42. That iconic badge and that 42 feet are within reach at this number. Just walk in with both eyes open. It's an older boat that has to prove itself line by line, not coast on its name. Remember the 2 doors from the start? This is where you choose, and I want your answer in the comments. For the same roughly $100,000, are you walking through door number 1? 42 to 44 feet of classic trawler soul, a Grand Banks, a CHB, a Marine Trader, character and upkeep and all? Or door 2, 35 to 40 feet of newer, simpler Mainship or Rossboro you could be cruising this weekend? The market says you get one of those stories, not both. Tell me which door and why. If this saved you from an expensive mistake, subscribe. There are plenty more trawler breakdowns coming. I'll see you in the next one.